everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Creator Convos. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi everybody, I'm Bob Warner. We're so happy that you're joining us this evening or in timeless time in our archives at co-creatorsconvergence.com. Looking forward to the evening.
And we're very happy to have Dr. Pamela Gerali back with us again. And of course, who brought this wonderful guest but Kathy Mason? And Kathy Mason's a wonderful supporter of the Co-Creators Convergence. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her after I tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. So stand by. So that's a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. And I'm real excited about our guest tonight. And Kathy Mason is a dear friend and a great source of wonderful speakers she shares. Kathy has her own marketing company, masonworksmarketing.com, and every Tuesdays and Thursdays she has wonderful guests. She does a Facebook Live show every Tuesdays and Thursday at noon Eastern Time. And that's where we discover all these wonderful guests, and she's very generous and selects the very best to bring to us our Thursday night convos. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you and Dr. Pamela Gerali. Welcome back to both of you. You're just blessings to our group, and we're so excited about everyone being here tonight. So thank you for coming, and we'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I am so excited to introduce you to Pamela Gerali, Dr. Pamela Gerali, who is a dear friend. She's a visionary, a healer, a guide to many. She's a pioneer in spiritual growth and transformation. And what happens with working with Pamela is that she has an innate way of working with a matrix that we'll be going over tonight called the Blueprint for the Human Spirit, which she downloaded after an illness. And it is quite amazing and powerful. And what's wonderful about it is the potential for everlasting growth for you as a person. It's a powerful tool. So I'll let her talk about that. But what I'd love to do first is have a centering. And normally I would open the Akashic Records, but Pamela was so kind to create a day 7 meditation that is from her book that we published for her, The Dance of Ego and Essence, Confessions of a Divine Diva. And so what I'll do is I'll just queue up YouTube real quick.
Day 7 Meditation. From falsehood to truth. Take a deep breath and exhale. Sink into the comfort of your chair. Allow my words about truth to be those of your own. I am open to the truth. I pause in the silence and listen, knowing that the truth is being revealed. I trust that I have the experience and discernment to distinguish truth from falsehood. I can feel as my body registers the difference between right and wrong, yes and no, positive and negative. On my inner journey, I examine the teachings of others with an open heart, mind, and soul. I share my thoughts and ideas with fellow students. I am guided toward the truth. On this quest for self-discovery, I welcome the opportunity to release emotional baggage and thoughts that no longer serve me. I let go of old beliefs that keep me from living authentically and with integrity. I know I am beloved, holy, and whole. For each opportunity to serve others and express my divinity through my humanity, I am grateful. I fully embrace and express the truth of my being. And so it is.
How beautiful. So Pamela, Dr. Pamela, could you unmute yourself? That would have been a hard conversation to hear.
That would have been
soliloquy here. So as you can see, the work that she does, all of it has a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful energy to it that heals and uplifts and shifts you to another level. And that one, do you want to explain about those meditations?
Yes. When I wrote my book, The Dance of Ego in Essence, 1 chapter a day for 40 days, I also received meditations. They came to me just like the general ideas flowed through me. And someone suggested that I record them. And so I asked a gifted artist here in Naples, Stu Shelton, who is a jazz musician and also a new age musician, if he would play. And we recorded 41 meditations, one for each day for the book and the companion journal. And I thought I'd just share that one with you because the meditations, when I was doing this with Stu, we would talk about the theme and then kind of come up with an idea. And he would just sit and play so intuitively along with my sharing of the meditations. And it was such a touching process. And I think the outcome is just so beautiful. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you. And I hope also that in the near future, they will be available on my website. So you can use that as a companion with the book and the journal. And so anyways, that's a little plug for my friend Stu, who is so gifted. Thank you.
Well, it was the perfect way to start this and get everyone in centering and a consciousness about what our opportunity is right now, because we're in a huge time of change, and your work could be the perfect resource for people going through change to release the fear and the baggage, right?
Yes. So, well, I am truly thrilled to be able to share once again with the group here at Co-Creators Convergence Convo, and to share something very special. Last time, I believe I did talk more about my book, but this time I want to share just a little bit first about the blueprint for the human spirit, and then tell you about a spiritually transforming experience that I had with 15 plus 1 past lives that actually occurred within an hour and a half in one meditation. It was such a powerful experience that changed my life along with everything else that I have been experiencing. But first, about the blueprint. I was raised in a very small town, conservative home, fundamental Christian church, and I was beat up by religion. So I left that all behind when I went to college, got my degree in nursing and a master's in public health, and pursued a career in public health and worked with a lot of nonprofit health organizations in expanding leadership roles. I was given the opportunity to go to the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. And there my life took a turn because I did visioning and journaling for the first time. We worked with change partners and did nature walks, all kinds of amazing touchy-feely things that you typically do not do at a leadership conference, but it was amazing. And when I went back to work, I realized that my position was no longer compatible with my new vision. So I quit my job and pursued a spiritual path. And I became a consummate seeker where I struggled and strove to discover the truth. I read every book I could. I went to every workshop and every holistic expo in an effort to discover more about myself and about my inner spiritual nature. Well, I was very fearful because I was raised with the unholy trinity of guilt, shame, and fear. And I was afraid somebody would lead me down the wrong path. But I kept trying. I kept opening myself to that. And there was a point in time where I was given an amazing gift. I was awakened at 3:30 in the morning when this veil is thin and the skies are clear, and information started flowing in. I received divine downloads for 6 months, 3 to 4 days, mornings a week. And as a result of that, the blueprint for the human spirit emerged. It began as a simple mind, body, spirit triangle, and it kept growing and growing in harmony with my personal growth. And along with that, I discovered I was intuitive and received guidance on how to do intuitive healings also. So this beautiful blueprint was an amazing, interesting, intellectual exercise. It appealed to my left brain because I like charts. I like things in order. I'm very rational and logical. But there was something missing because it wasn't really a deeper heart and soul type of information until one morning, about 6 years after the blueprint evolved. I was meditating on my lanai and I experienced 15 past lives in an hour and a half. And so I would love to tell you about that. But first, before I do, I'm going to ask Kathy to screen share and show you exactly what the blueprint for the human spirit looks like in a chart format. It also came with sacred geometry, so there were a lot of interesting aspects to this. But Kathy has a basic chart of the blueprint somewhere.
Right.
Take a look at it. There it is. Okay, so you can see that there are 5 dimensions: the physical, mental, emotional, intuitive, and spiritual dimensions of life. And then there are 5 fields of existence: the quantum, personal, social, global, and eternal. So when you multiply those, there are 25 boxes or cells in the matrix for the blueprint for the human spirit. And the blueprint is unique because it is about our inner landscape. It is not a religion, but it is based on ancient teachings, new science, Eastern philosophy, and Western psychology all wrapped up together. So it will appeal to people from all walks of life and all faiths, because it's about our inner landscape. And so you can see the different aspects of the blueprint. And certainly there is a booklet that you can download for free from my website, which is drpamelagerali.com. And on my homepage, you can download this booklet called A Blueprint for Conscious Compassionate Living. And it gives a little bit more of the history of the blueprint, a little bit more about how it all fits together, and some of the benefits that are available from this beautiful, coherent concept for how we can live more consciously and compassionately. The blueprint helps bring our mind, body, and spirit and our emotions all into alignment, so we can be authentic, so that we can live purposefully, so that we can live consciously and understand and embrace some of our special spiritual superpowers too. So this is the blueprint for the human spirit in a very basic chart form. There are many levels of this, of the blueprint, that show different aspects of it, different attributes, different, all different kinds of things related to it. But this is the most basic part of it. So the blueprint, like I said, and you can tell by looking at it, if you are a left brainer, that you will, it might appeal to you because it is logical and rational, but there's more to it than that. It really does appeal far deeper. And when I experienced 15 past lives in a meditation, then everything changed with regard to the blueprint. So we'll take that down for a few moments, and I'll tell everybody about what happened to me when I was meditating. So this one morning, 6 years after the blueprint emerged, I was sitting on my lanai. It was in October. It was raining. And to be honest with you, I'm not good at meditating because I'm very hyper and my mind goes crazy. So I was quite surprised that within a very short period of time, I went into a deep, deep meditative state. And just within a few minutes, and all of a sudden, it was as if I personally was experiencing a dramatic event in the lives of 15 different people. And one would come into me and I would be grieving, elated, overwhelmed, whatever. And then after about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, the next one would just hit me. And it just continued one right after the other, to the point where after, and I didn't even know how many there were, but I came to and realized I had been there for an hour and a half, and it was a Sunday morning, and I knew I had to go to church, or we were supposed to go to church. So I went into my office, my sacred space here, and I wrote in my journal a couple of lines about each one as I recalled them. And I recalled them in a different order in which they occurred. But I counted them and there were 15. Well, at that point, there were 15 primary cells in the blueprint matrix. And as I recorded the stories and I examined what happened to me, I realized that there was one core past life that reflected the essence of each person, of each cell in the matrix. And that is huge. That could not be an accident for sure. Well, I went to church and my friend looked at me and she said, "What happened to you?" Because I was so out of it. I mean, if you can imagine experiencing 5 people or 6 people dying, people that were just so overwhelmed by some dramatic event, I had experienced it all within an hour and a half. So she said, "Go home and write everything down, because if you don't do it right now, you probably will forget it." So I spent the next 8 hours typing up everything that I could recall. And in the process, then I was able to kind of really examine exactly what these 15 people were sharing with me. Now, the 15 people were from all walks of life. There were men, women, and children from ancient Mayan times to more recent early 1900s. And they weren't queens and kings, like some people always see themselves as having past lives where they're royalty. A couple of mine were, but anyways, so they were from all walks of life. And as I wrote their stories, I realized that first, they reflected aspects of my life. And yes, they were all from this planet. They reflected all aspects of my life. And they revealed some very amazing things. Some of them were victims, and they were treated horribly. Some of them had tried hard and failed, and some of them got it. They were able to live consciously and compassionately. So they were all very, very different. And they were so powerful that, I still feel their presence. And the major thing that happened as a result of this was that the blueprint from that moment on was no longer just an interesting intellectual exercise. I experienced it. I integrated it fully into my way of being. I felt it. It was a part of me. And so the blueprint took on a whole new dimension. I went to a whole new level, to the point where I felt I could more effectively share its teachings and the truth about it. And it could be such a greater blessing to so many more people. Plus, I realized also that when I worked with people doing intuitive healings, which I call spiritual blueprinting, there are many times when past lives come to light, and I could see where in the blueprint matrix they were and the core teaching that came with them. Now, one other really amazing aspect of each of these characters, archetypes or past lives, was that they each reflected a core shift in consciousness that was relevant to my personal growth. And I think they're universal archetypes, and so they are relevant to all of us. So that is what happened to me. So what I would like to do now is to ask Kathy to bring up the chart that shows all of the archetypes, and we'll talk a little bit about them. So here they are. Oops, keep going. Back up.
There we go.
One more. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see that there are 15 cells in the blueprint matrix here. And so for each one, there was a really interesting character. So I'd like to just, first of all, share with you a general overview. So all the individuals in the personal field, which includes the virgin sacrifice, the deaf and dumb child, the rejected nun, and the oppressed slave, and the catatonic girl, they were all victims. Then there were, in the social field, the impoverished mother, a scholar, a harlot, an exiled leader, and a glutton. They were all like ego, effort, failed, whatever. And then in the global realm was the shaman and the artist and the dancer and a crone and a saint. And they were able to really understand and share their wisdom in a conscious, compassionate way. So I don't know whether you noticed the process, but it parallels how we awaken spiritually. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But how many of you are interested in hearing the story about some of these individuals? I hope so. So anyways, let's begin with the virgin sacrifice. My husband and I travel quite a bit, and we went to Tulum, and we were in this ruins. And as we were walking through it, I felt this intense sense of deja vu. I knew the layout of the town. We walked past a home and it was like, I used to live here. Wow. And I just felt such an awareness about it. And this virgin sacrifice, a Mayan Indian girl, was 13. She was the first born by the winter solstice. She was the first that was born after the light shone through the rock, so to speak. And when she turned 13, her mother gave her back to the high priest, and she was sacrificed. Now, a lot of this is very symbolic, because when we look at dreams or whatever, death represents change or transition. And when her mother gave her to the high priest, that reflects that when we mature at age 13, we become accountable for our own self. We have enough, our higher self takes over, so to speak. And so you can see a little bit about some of the symbolism that is relevant in this story. Well, the core shift in consciousness associated with this particular past life or archetype is that we have to become responsible for and accountable for ourselves first. If we don't do that, then we cannot fulfill our higher purpose. We cannot do anything to the highest potential if we do not take care of ourselves first. And of course, if we follow the wisdom of the heart first pumps oxygenated blood to itself before the rest of the body. So that is a very core aspect of the blueprint, taking care of ourselves. So that is an example of one of the archetypes or the past lives that I experienced. So you can imagine how I felt. Here I am being led by these, my mother just let me go and didn't protect me, and I felt very betrayed. And she gave me over to the high priest, who led me up to this altar. And I knew that that was the end of my life. Now, the interesting thing about this one is that I was born on December 22nd, right after the winter solstice. I have the same birthday as Barbara Marx Hubbard. So you can see that there are aspects of each of these people that reflect my own personal life. So that is the virgin sacrifice. So next, I would like to share with you a little bit about the impoverished mother, just below the virgin sacrifice. This is the triad in the physical dimension. The impoverished mother I knew about because at one point I had a symptom that I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And the doctors said I didn't have anything wrong with me, but I know I did. I had a stomach issue, and they thought it was gallbladder, and it wasn't. So I went to a medical intuitive. And after she shared with me that I was sensitive to wheat and corn, she asked me if I had any questions. So I asked her, why did I choose not to have children in this lifetime? And she looked at me and she said, well, in a past life, you lived in Appalachia in poverty. You went through 3 husbands, had 22 children, many of whom died, and you knew you could never do that again. You grieved so deeply that you could not do that again. And then she said, and how could you be like the mother of this amazing thing and share it with the world if you had a family to take care of, if you had children of your own? Well, at that point, I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have a real purpose that I was aware of, but she alluded to that. And 2.5 days later, I was awakened in the morning and received my first transmission, my first divine download about the blueprint. But so I had been aware of this impoverished mother. But in my meditation, I was lying down and these dirty urchin faces were hanging over me. It was almost like I was trying to rest. I was trying to find a little sense of peace and quiet. It was cold. My husband had died. I had no income, no way of feeding my children, and I knew I was going to lose them. And I was grieving in advance, knowing that that would happen. And I felt as if I was a failure because I could not protect my children. I could not feed them. And there weren't any more prospects for husbands in the area, so I didn't have anyone to help me. But so that was a very powerful experience, but it was something related to a past life that I had already learned a little bit more about. So I would also like to share with you the third individual in this physical dimension in the triad, a shaman. And I have encountered him many times. He was from Southwest US 1,000 years ago. And so I'm going to ask Kathy to share his picture with you. His name is Tanate. And this picture was drawn for me by an intuitive artist. My sister did this for me for my birthday. And in I think the date on there was 96 or something like that. But look at his beautiful eyes. They're just glowing. And there is a sunflower, which is very symbolic, of course, and an eagle with a scroll in his claws, which is also very powerful symbolism of something coming into being's information. And he has a medicine bag. Well, this gentleman, this shaman, and I have had a number of encounters before and after this meditation. First of all, I became aware of him through this drawing, which I had never met him before. But shortly, probably a few years after I received this drawing, I was meditating and sucked through a wormhole 1,000 years. And I was sitting then as a Indian man at a fire, and this gentleman tapped me on the shoulder and motioned for me. We were going on a journey, and we were going to climb a mountain. Well, of course, that's symbolic of raising consciousness. And we started climbing this mountain, and it was very arduous, and we'd stop and rest. And then we'd climb higher and stop and rest and climb higher. And we got near the top of the mountain, and we merged as one. And in that moment, I realized that our spirit guides are actually a part of us, not a separate entity, but an actual part of us. And we continued up to the top of the mountain. And when we crested the top of the mountain, I was in the presence of God, and it was so light and so bright and so powerful and so intense that I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. And I knew something very special had happened. And I went on this journey, and Tanate was a part of me. Well, I also went on a trek with him at another meditation. And on the way back to our cliff dwelling, he gave me his medicine bag and all the powers and all the information that it represented and contained. And that was relevant to some of my healing work that I now do, because there's a sense of knowing that is just there as a part of that process. In my meditation, where I experienced him with the other 15, was part of the 15, he was there to guide his tribe as their spiritual leader, as their healer, and he knew what was coming. He knew that they were going to be disbanded, lost, but he continued to encourage and support and uplift his people to the best of his ability, and encourage them to sustain their homes and live in harmony with the earth. And certainly that is another core shift in consciousness that is a part of the blueprint. So if you will, Kathy, go back to the chart. There we are. So you can see, not that one.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know.
That one, that's the one. Yes, with all the archetypes. So I want to share something else with you with regard to the physical dimension, the triad there with the physical dimension. You can see how the first one was a victim. Well, victimhood, being a powerless victim, is probably the lowest level of spiritual awareness that there is, because things happen to us beyond our control when we are victims. And we eventually learn that we have choices, and we take those so that we move on to a place where we become almost ego-driven individuals, where we try to make things happen by us, by our own effort. So we move from where things happen to me to where things happen by me. You know, we strive in the workplace, in life, to make things happen. And I don't know about you, but I did that a lot. And then eventually we become the vessel through which God allows things to manifest. We become the hands and the heart and the voice of God, where we can live more consciously and compassionately. And the shaman certainly reflects that aspect of spiritual evolution. So there is that process that was very evident, and it parallels the blueprint from, you know, the personal and the social and the global, where in the personal, we're kind of focused inward on ourselves, and often in the past, because we're trying to deal with things, we have a lot of stuff, a lot of garbage, perhaps a lot of baggage that is keeping us from fully realizing our potential. And then ultimately in the social realm, we try to live purposefully and discover who we are, why we're here. You know, in the first realm, it's like, who am I? Then it's, why am I here in the social realm? And we focus more outward, serving others in whatever way we can. We attempt to develop and use our talents and treasures so that we can make a difference. And sometimes we do better than others, but when we're stuck in an ego-driven manner, sometimes we fail more than we succeed, or at least we struggle and strive much more than we need to when we are approaching life and our challenges from a more conscious, compassionate way. So then in the global realm, it's more focused, more expansive focus, and it is more on living in harmony and knowing a greater sense of oneness with everything and all that is. So you can see the shift that occurs as it's reflected in the blueprint, and it's also reflected in our spiritual evolution. So there are a lot of parallels between those things. And also then there are different types of interpretations with regard to each of the past life experiences that I have. You can look at them literally, which is more historic and factual, metaphorically or psychologically, or even more mystically. So these are examples for, I just thought I'd share with you those three in particular and show how we evolve as a part of that. But every single one of these past lives that I encountered helped me to realize a different aspect of my life and how and what I had learned after I had been studying with and being guided by the blueprint for the human spirit. So in the mental dimension, of course, we have to learn how to be open so that receptive to new ideas. And then we have to, like the scholar, and certainly I'll just very quickly tell you about the rest of these individuals. The deaf and dumb child was sent to school with her siblings and hid under the desk. The kids ridiculed her. Parents didn't want her around. And certainly, I don't know about you, but when I was a child, I was told that little girls are to be seen and not heard. And so there you have a deaf and dumb child who can't hear anything, but can't express herself either. The scholar or an orator in the from the Dark Ages had to learn how to express his truth fearlessly and without apologies. He was kind of like a Galileo who wasn't accepted by the powers that be, and he was hung for sharing what he believed to be true. And in the global realm, there was a gifted artist who was gay in the Renaissance, and he had an opportunity to become the darling of one of the wealthy and just create works of art for that individual. But instead, he chose to live more humbly and share all of his works of art with the public and created beauty for all to enjoy. So he became very conscious about how he shared his art. In the emotional dimension, the triad included a nun who was rejected and abused, and she was sent to this convent by her parents because she was deformed in some way. She was not a beautiful girl who anyone would want to marry, but she was abused by the others, the priests in the area and whatever, and she committed suicide as a result of that because she could not accept what happened to her or accept herself. So certainly the lesson there is to love and accept yourself. Then there was the village harlot. How many of you remember the woman at the well that Jesus spoke with? Well, this was like her, and her lesson was to learn how to express love and compassion and respect for all in a positive way. She was forced to give her body to others to survive. And every time she did, she lost a piece of her soul, a piece of herself. And it wasn't a choice that she willingly made, but it was very difficult for her. And then there was the joyful dancer from Russia in the 1820s. And I was aware of her also in the past. I had a reading from the School of Metaphysics, and I was told about her. And this joyful dancer and ice skater also loved to skate and dance and perform. And of course, she had to retire very early, young, and had 8 children. And she helped each of them to develop their talents and share their talents also. So she was able to generously share her time and talent and treasures. In the intuitive realm, this is about the circle of power. And I will mention in the blueprint, the physical dimension is about the circle of life. The mental is about the circle of wisdom. The emotional about the circle of peace or love. The intuitive dimension is about the circle of power, because it comes from the gut, so to speak, our core. And then the spiritual dimension is about the circle of light. So in the intuitive realm first there was an oppressed slave. And I don't know about you, but my parents made us do all kinds of work before we could go out to play. And sometimes I felt like a slave. And then, of course, later I became my own slave driver because I forced myself to do so much and pushed myself. So it was kind of interesting that happened. But this slave didn't realize that just across the road was freedom. And the old master had died and the new master was even worse. And he was just, felt totally hopeless. But this lesson was about learning how to stand up for ourselves and for our beliefs. There was an exiled ruler from Mongolia, and he was very democratic in how he approached ruling his country. And he really helped empower people. Well, unfortunately, he empowered the wrong people, and they took advantage and took over and exiled him so that he was no longer able to rule his country in a positive way. And he kind of became more like a wanderer and lost his ability to make a difference because he didn't know how to balance and hang on to his own power, how to motivate and empower others with, but yet in a way that was more positive. So, but that's something that we learn how to do in the workplace, certainly, and we have to use our influence to help others as well. Then there was an herbalist crone, druid, who managed to avoid being killed or whatever by the powers that be that were annihilating the crones and the healers. And she would give these men the evil eye, and they were afraid of her. So she was really powerful. And she continued to help her villagers with herbs and healing and as the midwife. And she followed her own inner guidance to make a difference in the lives of the people in her village and in the surrounding area. So she was a very powerful woman. So on to the spiritual dimension is, first, there was a catatonic girl. And the interesting thing about this was at that time, there wasn't an appreciation for mental illness, and she was horribly abused. But she was separate from herself, from her higher self. So she just was in this catatonic state because she wasn't able to, connect with the essence of her being. But that is the key here, to discover and express our divine essence. Now, the next guy, the decadent glutton, was from ancient Rome, and he was from a very wealthy family, and he had a chance to be very purposeful and to take over his family's business. But he was lazy and he was selfish. And his parents had died, so he inherited everything. And he just had his servants just kept bringing him food, and he just kept stuffing himself to the point where he was this Jabba the Hutt type person. It was just awful. And he would sit and look out his front of his home, and the poor people would walk past and put their hand out, because he's stuffing his face with all this food, and they just wanted something to eat. And he would just throw food and throw it on the ground. He would even share it. He was just so awful. And eventually his servants, said, well, we have to leave, because there's nothing left. He ate himself out of house and home, and he became one of the wandering because he did not live purposefully. He did not find a way to share his talents and treasures with others in a positive way. So he didn't learn how to live in a way that uplifted humanity. And the last one was a martyred saint. She was like Joan of Arc. who was burned at the stake. And as she was in flames, everybody could see the beauty, the message, the essence of her being. And she, mission accomplished. They saw the light. And so the message there is to let our light shine. So these, my friends, are just snippets of the 15 past lives that I experienced, these dramatic events in the lives of 15 people in an hour and a half. You can imagine the intensity of that experience. Now, there's one more experience that I had. This happened on a Sunday. On Friday, I visited with a friend who was a therapist. And I took this 12-page document that with all this information that I had analyzed about myself. I mean, each one of these people, reflected an aspect of my life and how they had, this core shift in consciousness. And I'm explaining this to my friend. And she said, well, would you like to do a past life regression? And I'm like, oh, why not? What's one more? What is one more? I knew it would take me years to understand exactly and to, someday I'm going to write this book, but in the meantime, I said, why not? She guided me back in time. And I was a child at the feet of Jesus. And he was like a beloved uncle to me. And he was so warm and so loving and so kind. And there were all these kids were playing around. And when he said, let the children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And in that moment, I knew what that meant. And I knew that this beloved child of God was the one archetype that reflected the eternal realm in the blueprint. And this beloved child of God shows us that in this eternal realm, we become innocent again, free of judgment. We are immortal because we are essence and never die. We are joyful, open, loving, playful, creative. All these qualities that children are. Let the children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And this is what we aspire to. So that final archetype or past life brought everything into perfect harmony for me and reflected to me, again, the eternal realm of the blueprint, how we express our divinity through our humanity and how we become the hands and the heart and the voice of God. So if every one of these archetypes in the personal realm reflect our victims and reflect how things happen to us beyond our control, and in the social realm, how we use our ego effort to make things happen, sometimes succeed and sometimes fail, and in the global realm, become the vessel through which things happen. In the eternal realm, we show up as the presence here on earth. And it's perfect. So that is my experience about what happened. And you can see how these archetypes are relevant to all of us. There, and in fact, each story has 3 or 4 different archetypes, like when the sacrificial virgin, then there is the mother, there is the higher priest, so each one, there are about three different types, three individuals that are relevant, and we might take on one or more of those at any given time. But I've talked way too long, but I hope the stories were interesting to you and you could see the impact that this has had on me and on my understanding and how I fully integrated the blueprint for the human spirit. What a gift that was. So what I would like to do now is to take down the sharing and to bring everybody together so we can talk a little bit more. And, possibly if you're interested, we could do just a little discussion about some of them. If you have questions, if you'd like to know more about them, if you'd like to share one of yours. So if we could, let me see if I can get the gallery here. Everybody feel free to turn on your videos. And if you'd like to share, raise a hand or something. I'd like to hear what you think of all of these people that I experienced in an hour and a half. So Noelle, talk to me.
I'm inviting everyone to go ahead and turn on their video. If you have any difficulty doing that, just put a message in the chat and we'll assist you. We did have to turn off a few folks' video, so you may not be able to turn it on. And if you have a question, we're kind of informal here. You can just wave your hand.
Yes.
That's fine. Or a comment. I find this fascinating. We've your whole download of the 15 people happened about the amount of time that we've been on this call. It's amazing that,
Yes, I mean, it was a powerful experience, but I mean, what a gift to be able to experience the blueprint in its fullest, from a whole different perspective. Yes. So does anybody have a thought or an idea, a question? If anybody doesn't want to share something that happened to you, perhaps another archetype that you, or a past life that you've experienced that might be relevant, we're open. Let's talk.
Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Bill wrote a book that
Okay,
I published.
Bill, talk to me.
Which Bill?
You, Bill.
You.
Beatty. Do you want me to go get your book and show him?
No. The interesting thing for me is that I have had more connections with soul entities than with past lives. The past lives have been revealed more through kinesiology questioning, arm testing, et cetera, when certain visions or senses, impressions of things have come to me. But it was very interesting. The only time I've done hypnosis was just a couple of years ago. And the hypnotic experience, the experience that came up was familiar to me because it involved one of the, I'm going to call it spirit partners that I have. And it was the embodiment of that spirit partner in ancient Egypt. Okay. Where I have tons and tons of ties about a lot of things that go on and on and on and on. So Kathy's fully aware of someone, she edited this 400-page book that I wrote, where I describe a lot of these kinds of things. And I've had a number of them since that time, including what I haven't shared with Kathy yet, but 2 nights ago, a complete revealing of the whole story for me, which was just, it was flabbergasting. And I wrote all of this down on a sheet of paper. And I'll just give me 1 second here.
And so this is related to a past life, Bill, or is this?
This is related to soul entities that are all working with my birth soul.
Okay.
Okay. And I wrote all of these down. 2 of them are Andromedans, 2 are Pleiadians, 3 are Hathors. Anyway, there's a team of 7, and I wrote all of this stuff down. And I got out my trusty pendulum, which Kathy's familiar with, okay? And I put the pendulum over the sheet of paper, okay? And the pendulum is going like this, okay? It was absolutely wild. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I absolutely, totally get it. So I don't need to go farther with it. I've had suspicions at various times of certain past lives, but it's always ended up with a connection with one of these rather phenomenal spiritual entities that work with me. So yeah, we can go into all of that. So hey, it's some other creator convergence meeting, okay?
Very good, Bill. We'll have you.
One of the things I was excited about having Bill get a chance to talk to Dr. Pamela is he was one of the people like Noelle that gave a testimonial for her book. And when he saw the matrix, the blueprint for the human spirit, he said to me, I have to talk to this woman because it made total sense to him. Whereas a lot of us sort of look at it and sort of go, okay, yeah, I get that. And then I get that. But Bill got it from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the framework, the framework itself is elegant. Okay. I mean, you've really touched all the bases in all the dimensions, and yeah, it's not often that you run into a profoundly left brain person who is profoundly right brain too. i.e. it's whole brain.
Yes, it is whole brain. Yes.
And a paper that I've just written and submitted to a journal is my attempt to take my whole left brain self and connect it to what Nassim Harriman and Greg Brayton and others that I've worked with have done, and basically ended up with, I mean, absolutely, totally integrated model. And because that's what it is. I mean, it's all an integrated model. We are all totally integrated beings capable of connecting whatever with whatever else there is.
Right.
So anyway, I'm delighted that this work has come to you and that you've been able to articulate it to people.
Beautiful.
Because that's where a lot of the gift is.
Yes, I will never forget sharing the blueprint with Barbara Marks Hubbard. Back in 2004, she spoke at a conference event that I held. We had a women's group at Unity of Naples, and she came and did a presentation on a Friday evening and did a workshop about conscious evolution. And I have a picture of us together, and I shared with her about the blueprint, showed her the chart. Of course, it was still relatively, it hadn't evolved to the fullest degree that it has today. But she said, yes, we're map makers. And she recognized it as something relevant and similar to what she had created. And at that point, she asked me if I would help and work with her and be one of her outreach people. And I said, well, you know, I kind of have my own work that I'm working on. And I was stuck here in Naples with a lot of responsibilities. But anyways, it was interesting to share that with her because of her many gifts and what she brought to the world.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Susie, did you want to talk? This is my friend Susie from Sedona.
hi, Susie.
Hi.
Hi, Susie.
Yes, I had a calling to go to Egypt in 1994 for the 12-12. And I didn't really know anything about Egypt in this life at the time, and I was clueless the whole time. And as we drove, there were 270 people in our group for this 12.
Oh my.
Well, on the 12th of December, 1994, this energy of unconditional love was going to be coming in through the Great Pyramid for all of humanity. And so I just read it and I had this urge to go. And as we were driving down into the town of Aswan, I started sobbing and I could feel somebody looking at me and I thought, oh gosh. And I turned around and looked and it was this woman who also had tears going down her face. So we kind of hugged arms. And then when we got there, down to where our ship was, and we had to have 3 huge ships because there were so many of us.
Yep.
We were in the same ship. So we went all the way up to the top and there were 2 women and they were pointing to some caves across the water,
Yeah.
across the Nile. And they were saying the ancient priests and priestesses are buried over there and they still highly honor them today. They light it up at night. They do ceremonies and all kinds of things. And my little bus friend said, I know I'm buried there. And I thought, am I? Is that why I'm sobbing? I mean, clueless. So we talked for a while, went down to the ladies' room, and we're waiting in line when these energies of our soul parts came in from across the creek, across the river. And so that was a soul part of an ancient priestess, a high priestess that I was during that time so long ago. And so then that night we went to the Temple of Philae, and we had little boats that took us over there.
Yeah.
And we were going for the light and sound show. And so everybody went this way. And I had this urge to go this way. And I'm standing in front of this place that I didn't know was the Temple of Isis with the Temple of Hathor behind it. And there's a chain or a rope or something, and I wanted to go, but I couldn't. And I'm standing there when this came down through me. This incredible energy shot down through my body, shot out my hand, and was vibrating. And I looked at it and I went, oh my God, we're healing a place. I never healed a place before. I had only healed people, you know? And so then I let myself make the sounds because I was told, you know, a year before that I was a channel of power without form, and that this power was the source of all that is, and it changed the cells in the DNA. But here it is working on this place. And so then I'm standing there and my whole body's shaking and the sounds are coming. And suddenly the whole tour group from the Light and Sound show came, and I'm feeling like an idiot, you know, with my body, you know, doing all this stuff and all these sounds coming out. So I tried stopping it, and it was like trying to hold back a river. And I had this thought, obviously I meant to do this or it wouldn't be happening. And the second thought was, I have no idea if or when I'll be back here again. So I decided, okay, I shut my eyes so they couldn't see me. And I let the sounds come and just let it happen. And the tour guide was talking to the people, and then they moved on. You know, he took down the thing and they moved on. but I could still hear some people. And then suddenly the energy changed. Now, instead of going like this and clearing the dark, heavy energies, we're opening the portal wider for the unconditional love to be able to come into the earth. And when I opened my eyes, when I was done, there were these 3 women standing next to me. And one put her hand on her hip and she leaned over and looked at me like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am," because I knew I did something really important. "What? You scared the God out of us." And when I got back, I was asked to do these talks and traveled around and did these talks about what happened to me. And even a presentation on the Portland TV that was only supposed to play 12 times, and it played for years.
Yeah.
Because it taught people about energy, about Egypt, about all this stuff. And so one of the women at the first talk that I did up in Washington said, "Well, you must have put the goddess in her, because that was the island of the goddesses." So that's
Beautiful.
one of my stories.
Were the sounds El, Ka, Lim, Om?
No, they're toning sounds.
Yes, I mean toning them. El, Ka, Lim, Om.
No, they're the vowels. They're the creative forces.
Okay, that's all right. That's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Susie, for sharing.
Yes.
Yes. Anybody else want to share? Perhaps one other thing I would ask, both you and Bill, if there was a core message, just like I received a core shift in consciousness that occurred with each of these people, because I do feel that when something this powerful happens to us, there is something critical or relevant that we need to get the message.
I can't see.
Well, for me, it was to be the vessel.
The vessel. Okay, good.
I've been calling it the Holy Grail healing ever since.
Beautiful. Okay, Bill.
Well, Susie, when you said the very first sentence or so, you said you were there and it felt like you were putting the pieces of your soul together or something like that.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I will make this long story extremely short.
Very short. Time to
I
go.
will. I found myself singing a theme, okay, while on one of those boats, okay, that you're talking about going down the Nile, okay, singing a theme, and I sung this theme. It was obsessing me, and I knew it, and I knew who wrote it because it's from a Wagner opera, but I couldn't identify it, but I know every theme in all the operas, okay? And I'm singing this theme and this theme and this theme and this theme. It's driving me nuts, okay? And the third night, I realized what the theme was. And the theme is the only time in the 4 ring cycle operas that this theme is heard. And it is where Siegfried is forging together the magic sword called Notum. And I realized I was on that trip to forge together the pieces of my soul, that I could stand in soul integrity. And that's why I was on the trip.
Thank you.
And so
thank you.
Those temples down there are just loaded with the energies, okay? And it's such a shame that so few tourists get it, but some do.
Thank you. I agree with you. When I experienced these 15 or 16 past lives, it was like pieces of my soul were totally healed and coalesced into this magnificent wholeness and oneness. So yes, thank you.
So Kitty wanted to ask a question. Miss Kitty?
Well, it wasn't a question, but I did have a past life experience that I experienced on the pyramids of the sun and moon. So I thought I would share that, but if we're out of time, I'll do it next time.
No, go ahead.
Real quickly, thank you.
So we were asked to go there, a friend of mine and I were asked to go down to the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon and do some healing work for the Catholic Church energy and the slaughter of all the people down there. So we went down there, and when we got there, it was interesting and I was enjoying it. And the second day, I knew where everything was. It was like I knew the blueprint of the buildings. I knew there was stuff they hadn't uncovered yet. I knew where everything was. And we climbed up to the top of the Pyramid of the Moon. And we got to the top, all these butterflies showed up, just millions of butterflies flew around us. So we stood there for a while and I looked over the Pyramid of the Sun and I saw this huge dirt devil, just gigantic dirt devil. I said, well, that's Quetzalcoatl. And I had never heard of Quetzalcoatl before. So we came down and we were touristing around and doing all this stuff and checking things out and doing the healing energy we were asked to go there to do. And then we got to the one of the museums, and here's a sign showing this huge dirt devil that they called Quetzalcoatl. The ancients called Quetzalcoatl. And we go, oh my God, this is what happened, right? And then I was standing in front of Montezuma's headdress, and it lit up like it was fiber optic. And I go, well, this is really cool. So I went and collected my friends, and we stood there for 20 minutes. It never lit up again. So it was like, wow. So it was just for me, to remind me, I think, that we had done a good job clearing the energies and that that's what we were there for. And that at some point in time, I had been there and been through all of that and helped other people then. So that's my story.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Kitty.
I do have a question, Pamela. So I'm going to come to you to get this blueprint. How do you use this in your healing work? That's what you come in and then you say, okay, you got this box, you have that box, and how's that work?
Well, the spiritual blueprinting is very unique. I become like a mirror and close my eyes, affirm, that we're all is well, positive, whatever. And my body goes into motion and I act out through positions and motions what's going on in the other individual. So I become like a mirror, and there's all kinds of energy associated with each body part. And when I received the Tenate's medicine bag and a divine download that just revealed to me what everything meant, then I know exactly what positions mean and what motions mean. And so I just speak about what my body's doing and what it means. And then, I say, does this make sense to you? And it's always, absolutely, So then there's always a shift in consciousness. There's always a solution, and it's usually a shift in perception. And that's almost it. And that is what healing is. Of course, there's energy associated with all of it, so that sometimes it's more physical, sometimes it's mental, emotional, sometimes we go in spiritual journeys. I had a woman who sat back and brought her knees up and gave birth to her higher self. And we've gone on journeys. I played the piano for, and talked about harmonies and discord. And the guy that I was working with was a concert pianist. I did not know that at the time, but that's the way it happens. But I always have an understanding of what aspect of life is being addressed and what the core shift in consciousness is coming forth to bring forth healing. And healing, like I said, isn't always physical, but it is, I work more in the psycho-spiritual realm. And that has to come first because it's the root of everything that happens to us physically. So if we don't heal the beliefs, the perception, the psycho-spiritual aspect, then nothing physical will really ever happen. So that is what happens. But I always have a sense of what part of the blueprint we're working on, because it just makes sense to me because I know it and whatever. So I reveal that to the people that I work with, but I prefer to go in cold. I don't want to know anything because I can get a little too mental and jump to conclusions. So it's better for me to just, have a blank slate, and I trust it implicitly because it's just comes from a higher place. It's just there.
Wow.
So
that's
I would encourage
awesome.
everybody to consider doing these. I do sessions, and they are very powerful. I've done groups, but typically it's more powerful one-on-one.
So
I've done couples.
videotape you?
I'm sorry?
I say, do we videotape you because you're doing all these movements, or you just?
Oh, I usually record it. And it's
Awesome.
pretty cool. If I'm like going back and forth, it's like indecision, I just know what it means. If I can't move and get up off my chair, I'm stuck,
Yeah.
and I need to release and let go. So there's just I have a whole dictionary full of motions and positions and imagery and stuff that has popped. So yes, but I would also like to just mention again that Kathy helped me with this new book called The Dance of Ego and Essence. It is a 40-day journey, and Noelle certainly and Bill helped review and write a testimonial for it with the companion journal that's called Embrace Your Divine Inner Diva. And it's not just for women, they're universal issues. There are affirmation cards that are very cool. And also I've done a series of 6 classes that Kathy is helping me. It's almost ready to go. And the first one is free. And it helps us deal with everyday issues that are relevant to us and find healing within, and how we shift our own awareness in order to address things and live more consciously and deal with the chaos that we have been facing. Another thing are those beautiful meditations. And I hope you enjoyed that. Stu is a gifted musician, and I have a different voice when I do my healing work and when I do those, and I think you could feel it.
You're beautiful.
And so there are 41 of them, one for each day in the book, plus the epilogue.
Well,
So
what I want to make sure everyone knows is to definitely go to drpamelagerali.com, which has been in the chat, and we'll make sure it's on Facebook as well. And download the free book. There is a free copy of the blueprint from the human spirit, and start looking at what she's offering. She's done a lot of interviews. It's on the media page, and you'll start sensing if this is your path, because it's radically honest. This is the path to clearing your shadows, clearing your shame, clearing the fear, clearing the things that are keeping you from your divine knowing, and being vitally happy, healthy, and
empowered.
Yep. So I want to make sure everyone knows to go there. And Pamela, thank you so much. I know more people will want to find you on Facebook and on your website. And thank you all for coming. Please share.
Thank you.
Please share this so more people know of this beautiful work.
Thank you.
And you're
Thank you, Noelle and Bob, for
Thank you. This has been
wonderful evening.
fascinating, just fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If
Bravo.
anyone would like to unmute, you're more than welcome to express your